Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivanadari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivanadari. Yashoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Yashoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai. Nityananda Prabhu ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to the Prabhupada. Okay. So today we have the privilege of hearing from Srimad Bhagavatam. So we'll be reading from 3rd Canto, Chapter 28, Kapila Dev's Instructions on Devotional Service. And we'll read from Text 7 here today. So we'll begin with the invocation here. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. Okay. Oops. Okay. Eter anyas chapati bir. Manodustam asat patam. Buddhaya yunjita sanak shankayar. Jita prano hi antandrita. Etar anyas chapati bir. Mano dustam asat patam. Buddhaya yunjita shanakar. Jita prano hi atandrita. Etar anyas chapati bir. Mano dustam asat patam. Buddhaya yunjita shanakar. Jita prano hi atandrita. Please chant. Etanyas chapati bir. Mano dustam asat patam. Etanyascha patibir. Manodustam asatpatam. Buddha yunya sadikar. Jira pandra etanyaya. Etanyascha patibir. Manodustam asatpatam. Buddha shanakar. Idopano etandriya. Etanyascha patibir. Manodustam asatpatam. Buddha yunjita sanikar. Idopano etandrita. Etanyascha patibir. Manodustam asatpatam. Ayunjita sanghar. Jita prano etandriha. Before we begin here, are we wired in the kitchen these days? How's this?
Yeah, they can turn on the radio in here.
Okay, I was just curious. I don't know. If someone wants to go, but I don't really know what the system is these days.
Yeah, they know they can do it. They know do it.
All right. Anyway, so who's in there today? Okay, cool. Okay, so read the word for word. Etai, by these. Anyai, by other. Cha, and. Pativi, processes. Manaha, the mind. Dustam, contaminated. Asatpatam, on the path of material enjoyment. Buddhaya, by the intelligence. Yunjita, one must control. Shanakai, gradually. Jita prana, the life air being fixed. He, indeed. Antardrita, alert. Translation and purport given by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. By these processes, or any other true processes, one must control the contaminated, unbridled mind, which is always attracted by material enjoyment, and thus fix himself in the thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Etar anyayascha. The general yoga process entails observing the rules and regulations, practicing the different sitting postures, concentrating the mind on the vital circulation of the air, and then thinking of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in His Vaikuntha pastimes. This is the general process of yoga. This same concentration can be achieved by other recommended processes, and therefore anyayascha, other methods, can be applied. The essential point is that the mind, which is contaminated by material attraction, has to be bridled and concentrated on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It cannot be fixed on something void or impersonal. For this reason, so-called yoga practices of voidism and impersonalism are not recommended in any standard yoga shastra. The real yogi is the devotee because his mind is always concentrated on the pastimes of Lord Krishna. Therefore, Krishna consciousness is the topmost yoga system. Om Jnanat Mandasya Yaranjana Shalakaya Chakshu Mritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master in Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto them and all members of Sri Parampara. So I'll just read the text once again here. By these processes, or any other two processes, one must control the contaminated, unbridled mind, which is always attracted by material enjoyment, and thus fix himself in the thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Hare Krishna. Okay. So, just a little, see, everyone's been paying attention, Bhagavatam class. Well, I've been gone to India. So here we have Kapila speaking here. But who is he speaking to? Anybody know? Dravida? His mom. So Kapila he's instructing his mother, Devahuti, on devotional service, the process of devotional service that she should practice. Little side point here is that in the Bhagavad Gita, it's mentioned that anyone can take to the process of devotional service. Normally, sometimes women are considered less. Sometimes they're considered less intelligent. But here, Devahuti, she's able to hear the instructions of her son Kapila and make advancement in Krishna consciousness. So, there's a few points here in this verse, actually. One thing I'd start out with here is that this process of yoga, it's actually meant for controlling the mind. We can see that, these Ashtanga yoga, all things like that, they're designed to create a situation favorable for having a controlled mind. The sitting postures, being in a secluded place, it's all meant to facilitate this controlled mind. So it's significant here that Prabhupada takes out these words, etar anyayascha, that there are other processes for controlling the mind as well. So we, as members of the Hare Krishna movement, we do not so much follow this yoga process of strictly controlling the breathing, sitting on a particular seat, sitting in the middle of the wilderness. But our process of controlling the mind is chanting Hare Krishna and engaging in the service of the Lord. This is our process, and this is actually authorized here in this verse by Kapila. So, Prabhupada here mentions in this verse, so it's mentioned here that in the purport that the attention of the mind has to be focused on Krishna and not anything else, and that I'm a little jet lagged. My brain's not working so well here. So this attention has to be focused on Krishna and not something void or impersonal. Now, actually, we can see this. This is because the mind needs to be attracted by something. Actually, here in the text of the verse, Kapila is saying the mind is always attracted by the path of material enjoyment. It's natural. One doesn't have to hear from Kapila to understand this. It's experienced directly. So, in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, text 59, this process of controlling the mind is actually explained. And it says that even though we may be restricted from sense enjoyment, things we used to like to do, the taste for this sense enjoyment still remains. So what to do? So we have to, we cease these engagements by experiencing a higher taste. And by experiencing that higher taste, we're fixed in consciousness. So without this higher taste of Krishna consciousness, it's impossible to stay fixed on this path of yoga. It becomes dry. We are naturally looking for ananda. And if we don't get ananda, then we're going to look for something else. It's natural. So here, Prabhupada is really putting home this point that one has to concentrate the mind on Krishna. Krishna means all attractive. That's one clue there. And naturally, we can see that devotees who come to Bhagavatam class regularly, who regularly take Krishna prasadam, who regularly see the deity, they become addicted to it. Somehow or other, they can't go away. It's just quite interesting, actually. The devotee, he develops his taste for Krishna, and one can actually practically experience that there is some higher taste there. Even though the devotee, he may still retain some material desires, that this attachment for Krishna, it keeps growing. here in this verse, the word let's see if I pronounce it right. I'll butcher it here. Shanakai, gradually, is mentioned. So it's not that we are going to become perfect in yoga, perfect in Krishna consciousness in a day, but that we should be patient. Srila Rupa Goswami, in his Nectar of Instruction, he mentions that enthusiasm has to be there and patience have to be there. So both of them have to be there. We should be enthusiastic. We should be eager. We should make the effort like we could become Krishna conscious today. But it's going to take some time. It's going to take some time to advance in this process of Krishna consciousness. Now, another point about controlling the mind here is that in the actually it's mentioned in the word for word here that the mind should be controlled by buddhiya, the intelligence. So in the Bhagavad Gita, it is mentioned that there's the mind, and still higher than the mind is the intelligence. So the intelligence is kind of the controller of the mind. You might see, I've been around kids a little bit in India, different gurukuls like that. And sometimes I hear devotees say, kids are all mind. They don't have a whole lot of intelligence. The mind says, go here. They're like, yes, go there. So the mind is like that. So it needs to be governed by the intelligence. Now the problem is our intelligence has, for the most part, has been contaminated. The intelligence leads us to further sense enjoyment, and the mind accepts that. So in Krishna consciousness, we are training the intelligence actually, and this intelligence is trained by the instructions of Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. So we develop a spiritual intelligence. We think, how can I put myself in a situation where I'll be more Krishna conscious, actually? And we heard devotees use this term of Krishna conscience. So everyone, they have even the most contaminated people, they have some conscience. Maybe I shouldn't do this. There's some conscience there. But so our conscience should be based on Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. That if I do this, would my Guru be pleased with me? If I do this, would Krishna be pleased with me? Is this in line with the Shastra? In our Pujari room, we have a little sign now that Dayanidhi made. I think we saw it in Houston or something when we were there. It says something along the lines of, leave the deity room as if your Guru was going to come and see it. So we should act in such a way that if your Guru comes, that we are not put into anxiety. Sometimes your room might be unclean. You don't want anyone to go in it. You're like, So our activities should be so pure that actually the Guru, he can, we can feel comfortable with the idea that even if someone is watching us. Even if our activities aren't pure, that we should be acting in such a way that we're trying to make advancement. That they can see an upward trend. Like Javita was mentioning in his Gita class the other day about Shama Sundar Prabhu. And Shama Sundar Prabhu had trouble with cigarettes. And Srila Prabhupada, he encouraged him by having him gradually quit this habit. So even if we aren't pure, which most of us aren't, I'm speaking for myself, we should be pursuing the path of purity here. And this is the process of Krishna consciousness. So we have rules and regulations. We chant Hare Krishna every day. We go before the deity every day. This is our program of purity. I was reading a little snippet of Prabhupada sent by my Guru Maharaj about Gurukul, but that's not, the Gurukul context isn't so important, but he was talking about good character, and he was saying you can see it, if they're coming to morning program, if they're reading, if they're actually doing the devotional activities. They don't need some test to figure that out, Here in the mundane world, they're always interested in tests. how much advancement is your child making? Can he do this test? Can he do this? But the test of a devotee is actually, the test of a devotee is his character is seen by his actions, his body, his words. It's just seen on his person. It's just seen on his person whether he's actually making advancement in Krishna consciousness. It can't be artificially. You can only be artificial for so long, and then the truth will come out. So, some more things I wanted to say. So, just a little more about the mind. So we may be practicing Krishna consciousness for some time, and the mind may appear to be somewhat controlled. We're in the ashram, we're relatively safe here, especially in India. There's less temptation, in one sense. Especially because you're not familiar, you don't know where the temptation is. You don't know where to look. But actually, we should be very, very much careful with the mind. Elsewhere in the Bhagavatam, I believe, I was looking for the verse this morning, but I couldn't find it. Elsewhere in the Bhagavatam, the mind is compared to a tamed animal that's in a cage. So although the animal, it may appear to be tame, it may be in a cage, but one is still very careful around that animal. The animal, it could exhibit its wild tendencies at any moment. So the animal trainers, they're very much careful with the animals. So similarly, although our mind may be controlled by our determination in Krishna consciousness, it may be controlled by our environment. It may be somewhat, we may be doing what we want it to do. It may be within the realm of devotional service. But we should be very much careful that it doesn't become contaminated, that it doesn't go out of the way, and we should not trust it. It can go quite far very quickly. There's the famous example of a jawmill who, in a matter of somewhat a short time, he really went down the wrong path. And it took him some years to come back to the right path, actually. And that happens. We can see even with the example of Jada Bharat. And actually, it's interesting because his case is it's quite different. Because the jawmill, his mind got diverted by what we might say sinful activities. He was attracted to a prostitute. But Jada Bharat, his mind was actually diverted by pious activities. Kind of funny, actually. And he was at such advanced level of devotional service. But because his mind was not checked by the instructions of Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, he was also diverted by the path of devotional service, from the path of devotional service. So we should be very much careful about controlling this mind. So, Srila Prabhupada, this whole Krishna consciousness movement, I feel funny saying this because I've said, you can summarize the Krishna consciousness movement in so many different ways. You could say the whole Krishna consciousness movement is to associate with devotees. We could say many different reasons for this whole Krishna consciousness movement. But one of the main reasons for the Krishna consciousness movement is controlling the minds of ourselves and the people in general. Is that this Krishna consciousness movement, it's meant to fix our minds on Krishna. So we have our morning program here, where we're not supposed to do anything else. Thinking of Borijan Prabhu, Zach, Balaram and I, we were in India together, and we went to a retreat at Govardhan. And Borijan Prabhu, he was mentioning some tips for japa. And one of the things he said about our japa, say we have our japa time, at least it's 5:15 to 6:15. And he was saying we should say to ourselves, we have nothing else to do. Nothing else to do during that time. Not time to pay the bills, not time to check the email, not time, it's not time to think about the situation, it's not time to check on the, it's japa time. So the morning program, it's really supposed to be like that as much as possible. That we have our schedule and we just fix our mind on that. We're not meant to be diverted to so many other things. Because during the day we have so many other things to do. sometimes for Krishna, sometimes also for the necessities of the body. So during this time, we should really be focusing the mind as much as possible on our Krishna conscious sadhana. So this controlling the mind, it's a gradual process. We'll make mistakes, we'll be diverted. But the Gita says, in the Gita it said that even though the mind, it may go away, when we see it goes away, we bring it back. It's said, Srila Prabhupada in the translation, he says the mind is unbridled. So horses on a chariot, they're bridled, so they're controlled. But even though they may be bridled and controlled, they can still kind of go off the path a little bit sometimes. So the charioteer, he brings them back. So by our Krishna conscious intelligence, we can bring the mind back, even though it may go so many other places. Now, so Krishna consciousness, we should be convinced that this is actually the only path to our salvation, the only path to pure happiness, the only path to be. Basically pursuing our Krishna consciousness, that is actually the highest good. We should be convinced of that. And being convinced of that, even though we may make so many mistakes, we will be motivated to go back to this path of Krishna consciousness. It's not like, oh, I'm not a very good devotee, so maybe I should be an environmentalist. I'm not a very good devotee, so maybe I should be a politician. So that's not the case, actually. If we're not a very good devotee, we should strive to become a very good devotee. And all success will actually come from that. That'll keep us fixed in our determination here. So, I'm kind of going in circles here a little bit, maybe the jet lag. Srila Prabhupada, he's mentioning in the purport these other authorized processes. So like I said, we don't do this hatha yoga so much. Sometimes devotees do, but we don't focus so much on that. Srila Prabhupada did not emphasize that very much. So our process of yoga is primarily this chanting Hare Krishna. By chanting Hare Krishna, gradually our mind will be controlled. It'll be fixed on Krishna. I heard a quote recently that unless you chant 16 rounds a day, then it's impossible to fix the mind on Krishna throughout the day. Kind of a heavy statement. But actually, we can see practically how much this actually really helps us. There's other things too. Kirtan, it's very captivating, actually. At least for myself and many of the devotees, they get captivated by kirtan. So many devotees, they listen to kirtan, their headphones, they have the kirtan going all the time. So somehow or other, we should utilize our resources for remembering Krishna at all the time. So the ultimate goal here of the yoga, which is mentioned here, is to fix ourselves in the thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So whatever we can do to help that, we should accept. Srila Rupa Goswami, in his Nectar of Instruction, he mentions that we should accept all things that are favorable for devotional service and reject all things that are unfavorable. So this may actually, there's some general processes that are there, but this may actually vary from individual to individual, what particularly absorbs us in Krishna consciousness. Like Javita Prabhu, for instance, he's very much fond of shlokas. We had one devotee here, Priya Radhika Mataji. I don't know, some of you may remember her. And I could see she was very much Krishna conscious by cooking, actually. I remember one time, this really stuck out in my memory. I have a hard time cooking myself. It's difficult for me a little bit. I like it. What? Don't what? Yeah. Yeah. Anyways, so I have a hard time. I used to cook the 5:30 offering here. I just barely get it done on time. Maybe it'd be okay. And I remember one time praying Priya Radhika mother, she was cooking the offering. And usually you only make one sabji here. And she was looking at Krishna's plate and she's like, oh, it's so empty. It's so empty. Let me make a few other sabjis. So she went and made like 2 or 3 other sabjis for the 5:30 offering, So she was very much Krishna conscious by her cooking, actually. My Guru Maharaj, for instance, I can see he's very much Krishna conscious. I can see he's very inspired when he speaks, when he writes. This is really what keeps him going in Krishna consciousness. So we define something that really enthuses us in Krishna consciousness, and in that way, we can actually fix our minds on Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada, he was always trying to find some way for the devotees to be engaged in Krishna consciousness. He saw people were painted. He said, "Okay, you paint for Krishna." So we can see devotees, they have all sorts of different ways to fix their minds on Krishna here. So where should I go from here? So maybe I'll open up for any questions or comments here. Yeah.
You mentioned about ISKCON, how he's enlivened by writing, and that's obviously true. But if you study Prabhu's letters, you'll find, I don't think not so much in the conversations, but in the letters, he encouraged his disciples to all write. And that was what the BTG originally was created for, or maintained, restarted, and that gives the devotees a chance to express themselves through writing, preach through writing. Now, of course, with so many devotees, there's not that many outlets, but of course now with the internet, everyone can have a little Facebook page. But the idea that writing very much concentrates the mind, and those who write, they can speak better. That's also a fact. That you find that you're always pulling in the vocabulary, figuring out how to say things. So, I don't know where we can go with that, what kind of outlet we can have to write, but we can, that's the fact that writing is a tremendous way of focusing the mind on Krishna. And that's one of the reasons why you always see more and more books being produced by the devotees. I mean, there's probably enough books.
Yeah.
And they're going to keep coming, because once you get into the writing, and especially if you can get it published, it's a special case. I haven't done that much of it.
Just to follow up with the original book, there's a lot of processes of different treatment processes that they'll suggest that even if you don't publish it or share it, the writing of a journal.
Yeah.
Everything is great therapy.
There's even something called Nikita Japa, which we don't usually use. You heard of that? Nikita means to write. And actually writing the holy name. Writing. And some other groups, we don't do that because all right, we're collecting everybody's, everyone do so many rounds writing, and then they collect it and they worship it. The written word becomes, the written name becomes holy.
Yeah, I was just reading a book, like Krishna Conscious Come to South Africa.
Yeah.
But this devotee, Krishna song, and in Krishna song, he was writing to Prabhupada, and he was saying how he himself was writing, and then Prabhupada said, "Oh, okay, that's very nice," and so you continue writing, and then maybe we could make a small book. Make a small book and print. Interesting.
If there's no more, I can give a little bit of my latest realization of pronunciation on what it is.
All right.
In our usual tunes of chanting the Panchatattva mantra, we end up saying Nityananda. Nityananda, everyone does it. I listen, and this is the way the tune works out. But Nityananda doesn't really mean Nityananda. It's Nityananda, which means always blissful. Nityananda. But if you say Nityananda, you're saying it's not bad, always related to Nanda Maharaj. That is Balaram, but it's not exactly what we're looking for. So just an encouragement to try to, usually what happens, the A's tend to the long A's tend to get short. And that changes everything. As in Shastra and Shastra. What's this? You probably don't know. exactly, shastra. No.
It's a weapon.
Shastra, of course, is they both share the idea they control you. The same root is there. They expect to be controlled either by the Shastra or by Kali's weapons. She has many weapons. And material energy will definitely control you and keep us down. But if you voluntarily agree to be controlled by Shastra, that's another situation.
Hare Krishna. Any other questions or comments from this side here?
I think that you can also look at your progress if you write, like if you keep a journal to yourself. You can see your progress or how you mature in Krishna consciousness, the way you think. I remember one time I found a bunch of letters that I had written to my spiritual master, and I was like, God, I was so naive back then. Because obviously as you grow older, not only in age but also in Krishna consciousness, you tend to mature and things like that. So you can see how much your progress, you can see how much the effect of Krishna consciousness is having on you. So that's something very important, I think. Sometimes the world is feel discouraged. When in the beginning we go and you're really enthusiastic and you're advancing so much, but there is a moment you get that you seem to be stuck and you don't feel much progress. But if you start looking back, you see how much you're progressing and how much more convinced you are. And by looking at what you used to write and what you write now, you can totally different.
That's an interesting point.
And I just want to support that. It's so true. I've journaled the thought that I got, so inspired to write, I'll go write. And then like months or years later, I'll go back and look at this and I'm like, man, I had no clue what was going on.
All right. Anyone else?
So,
Yeah.
when it says that John was attracted to a prostitute,
Yeah.
and then we have Bill, another talker,
Yeah.
who was also attracted to attached to the prostitution family. So, I'm just curious because, Prabhupada's language, sometimes he uses words in different ways.
Yeah.
So when Prabhupada says, that John was attracted to a prostitute, or when he said Bill, the talker was attached to a prostitute, is he referring to actual prostitutes, or referring to, like in Vedic society, just like girlfriend type of thing?
Yeah. Just
I don't know if anybody
see. I don't have a concrete answer to this, but you can see that at least in the example of the prostitute in the Jamil's time, that she was not a chaste lady, because Jamil, he first saw her with another man, and then he became intimate with her. So obviously this was not a chaste lady,
Whether she was actually
Yeah.
in the business of prostitution, but Bill Mangal, I think, was, but she was a very pious prostitute. And this idea, is perhaps like an oxymoron for us. But it's right there in the Bhagavatam. The society ladies in Dwarka, they all came out to greet Krishna. They were also devotees. That's a polite way in society. But Adami was was low class. The whole thing was low class. He wasn't preaching to Adami. If you'd only be attracted to Krishna, you ought to be fine now. But Chaitanya, the prostitute, was actually a devotee. So the whole, and Vivemananda himself had a background of devotion, which then just was awoken.
Yeah.
And Adami, he was and then a Brahmin, not exactly a full-on devotee. So it's a different thing.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. All right, we're at time. Grantharaj Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Useless down there. just start, you know, it's like, it's very full stuff. What are you doing?
That's what he said about prostitute. You often just mean a loose woman. Not faithful.
That's not a strict.
But literally, prostitute.
That's okay. Not strict. All I want is to be
Yeah, there may be another word in Sanskrit for it.
That's all.
But who is that lady who was song of renunciation? Pink.
It's okay if you find it. Woman. I feel that there's some capital actually. Krishna. No, I guess. Well,
Oh, one lady.
Not just working in a problematic way. Each body has a different range of speed. Here's my range within that range. So you can start connection between the brain.
I'm okay. If you have it, you have to change the word.
You just got like this, man. I got that one day before you get I spent a whole day.
Yeah, it's yeah, that's
You got
Yeah, because I was in India and then
all day.
all of a sudden I started coughing and all the dust.
yes.
It was slightly cold. That wasn't such fun, I think, but all the dust.
See if that's
And I went out to Govardhan and there was dust.
Different.
So it doesn't clear up in a little while, you know.
Oh, actually, very punchy. Right? That was all I did. It's at 9:30. 9:30.
So whether you Swami gives the talk on Sunday, I don't know.
You gave me a list.
Yeah, it's run out. So I was thinking maybe either you or you. I don't know.
India? Yeah.
In
India, it'd be so we're really out of it. Yeah. So like, it feels like I just took a nap at night, and now this is the.
I'll check it.
It's really weird.
Nina was given the talk this Sunday by any chance? No.
Agree.
Oh, we discussed it. I usually do, as you know, I usually do my summary.
Yeah.
So that's going to go.
That's already there.
So
You can help me with that.
But I'll talk about. He said his health is good.
Today's Wednesday. No, today's Thursday. Because I was in Hong Kong, so I was in Hong Kong. And I was actually down there. And I was in Japan. The ground.
Not from a tree.
Oh, the idea was from a tree. Yeah, the grains and the beans. There's no grains or beans coming from trees. So most of these trees, you get fruits and nuts. Yeah, I mean, most of these the category of non-grains and fruits and nuts.
I was thinking anything that comes from a tree is vegetable.
There's things that don't come from a tree that you know, like you're mentioning.
Yeah.
Vegetables.
Roots. Yeah, Kadashi was yesterday, and you can bring the back and like window at 6:30 to 6:00.
You can eat whatever falls from the tree, from your front yard. My front yard? If anything falls, you take it. The cactus.
Now you had some tree there.
I had some bananas that I was providing the temple with for a while.
Oh, you had banana tree?
But not other trees. So many trees.
I guess I'm not putting my head
They were just choking out all of my.
Oh, that's a shame. Yes, sir.
Devotees.
You got the dhotis. You got the sloka. Denu vrindamanavanamayatam Venu geetamavatam visvajantam Renu ruchitadalalakavantam Kenu vicha samayonamudantam.
Learn one.
What's the one about sleeping?
Certainly. I had a question about that one, because it's certainly but then the pada is P-A-D, long tail. Is it pada or pada?
The pada and pada are like interchangeable, depending on your need for the meter. Same thing with purusha and purusha.
If it's spelled P-A-D, long tail, is it?
Pada, that's a different word. It's not pada and pada are both like B.
Okay, because in the verse it's spelled third name is still spelled P-A-D, long tail.
No, I can't. Let's check. I think you.
Wait,
I'm not going to say for sure. Oh, you got it. It gets a new sound?
yeah.
Oh, but you turn it off, so it's. To try to preserve the battery, you turn it.
Yeah.
That slows things down when you want to check in right away.
That's true.
While that's coming up, I'll be checking.
Was there any interesting things that happened from the meeting?
Oh boy.
The
Now I got to
aspects.
go to my minutes.
Boiling down the aspects, or not really?
Well, the main thing that I'm concerned about, which wasn't mentioned there, was Carlos. He's hanging around because his parents are around.
Yeah. I
And,
think he only comes once or twice a year, though.
well, he's coming regularly. So we have to figure out what, because he never comes to class and he doesn't come to university treatment. He shows up and sorry, we got somebody with him too.
Oh, does he come for lunch, or does he come for dinner?
I don't know, because I don't come for lunch myself. But he would
The last
show,
offering or something?
yeah, he would show up at the end, maybe a little bit of the here's my last kirtan Wednesday. I don't think you're going to be brazen this year.
Well,
to avoid butter.
he needs to find, anyways, I told him what to do, but of course, hardly anyone wants to follow him. I told him what I thought is an intelligent thing to do to try to solve the problem, but yeah, no one wants to.
No.
What about the ashram? Did they mention anything about the ashram?
Yeah.
Oh, there's no pada. Maybe I wrote it wrong.
The ashram.
Yeah.
Fixing up the ashram?
Yeah.
Yes, we definitely want to do that. And we have some money came from.
Buddha and Krishna Raj.
Yes, yes. But we have to get the official notes to find out exactly what we're doing. I'm kind of out of it. And,
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think what they'll do is they'll send out, like, don't they usually do that after the what is it called?
Just ask Rod Priya.
Don't they usually send that after the meeting, like a few days after? Oh, these are the notes.
I always remember being for the next meeting, you get, what happened the last meeting.
Oh, I see.
But
the next,
they probably haven't. But,
No.
Bhajya Gopal, he has wasn't there, he had no problem with that.
yeah.
But Radha Priya was taking notes.
Okay.
So she'll tell you.
Okay. Yeah, because right before the next meeting, they send out the agenda for the next meeting, and then they
Yeah.
send out the notes of the last
Yeah,
meeting.
yeah, yeah. But if you want to get.
But I can get him in advance from Priya.
Yeah.
I want to fix